Hello, BookTube. It's Friday, and that means it's time for Friday Reads, one of my favorite BookTube traditions where BookTubers stop and take stock of their reading. They look at stuff they've recently read and talk a little about it, not formal reviews, but, reactions, the things that are oftentimes more interesting than a formal review. As ironic as it is for me to say that, on a venue like BookTube, that is. And where they also look forward to the things that they want to read immediately, things that are looming on the horizon. I love those kinds of videos. I love them, I think, even more for how often they don't map with what ends up being real. It shows our bookish community at its most dreamerish, and I love that. I want to participate. It's a little hard for me than for some other BookTube channels because I do nothing but read. The rest of you have jobs. You have lives, loved ones, personal hygiene, pants. I don't have anything like that. I don't do anything but read. And I read a lot. I read awful fast, and I read for 6 or 7 hours more than you do because I hardly sleep at all. I'm as old as dirt. And as a result, if I did a Friday Reads in the way that BookTubers typically do, it'd be 2 hours long and even more boring than my usual videos. I thought that originally I thought that kind of ruled me out. But I thought, oh, Gertrude, get over yourself. So I thought about it and thought, of course I can still do this. Of course I can still join in the fun. I can talk about some books I've recently read, especially concentrating maybe on things that are, for those of you who are new to the channel, and there's a mind-boggling number of you who are new to the channel. I don't know why that's happening. I have my best minds on the case, but for those of you new to the channel, my beat, the thing, every booktuber has a kind of thing, an area where they officially or unofficially concentrate, either for their channel or just in their reading life. And my beat for the last great many years has been the new release market in America. Not to be, Susie fashionable, but because I am a book reviewer. And I have just fallen into the habit of loving that. I trust me, that wouldn't be my beat if I had to pay the extortionate prices these things cost. If I had to do that, that wouldn't be. But it is. And I forget where I was going with that. Where was I going with that? Well, anyway, my point was, if I concentrate, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, if I concentrate in these Friday Reads on things that are either out now but still new, or that are right around the corner, something that you could, for instance, put on hold at your library, or pre-order on Amazon, or pre-order at your bookstore, that isn't, a million miles away, as some of the books that I get on this channel are. You've seen that. I'm getting books from late summer. I thought if I concentrate on that, both for things that I've recently read and for things that I intend to read soon, then no harm, no foul. Then that is a Friday Reads type of a kind. Most people's Friday Reads, when they get to the part about what they're planning on reading soon, the books are already out. In some cases out for millennia. That's not strictly the case with me. I'm typically not in these Friday Reads including rereads for me, or rereads I'm planning on doing with or without other booktubers. Like, for instance, I just reread Boy's King Arthur by Sidney Lanier. And I noticed a lot of stuff in it. I noticed a lot of stuff that he was doing. Great Georgia writer. Georgia's been, not to be stereotypical, but it's been on my mind lately. I noticed a lot about it, but I'm not going to include books like that. Instead, I will include new releases and re-releases of old stuff. So I want to go through that now. I want to go through a Friday Reads for now. I noticed that it's been almost a month since the last one of these that I did. Gee, the videos pile up when you can't shut up. And the comments on that last Friday Reads were favorable. They were kind, as you people almost always are. But they made one point over and over again, which is that a video of just my face with smallpox scars from 1872 is probably not preferable to a video that has props, that has covers. And also that in addition to covers in the video, I should also list the books down below. I am going to try to remember to do both of those things. I have my iPad right here with covers for the books that I'm going to talk about, and I will try to remember to list the books down below in case you want to skip the video part. So we're gonna bounce around here. I was saving covers to the iPad so I had things to show you, so you wouldn't get mad at me. And I didn't save them in, I wasn't thinking ahead. I didn't save them in the order necessary so that just scrolling through them would cover first the ones I have read and then the ones I haven't read. So we're gonna bounce around a little there. We're just going to go through these pictures and let them prompt us. So grab some Dramamine. The first one we're going to do is a romance novel. Modern, urban, supernatural romance by Christine Feehan, who is almost the undisputed queen of that kind of romance. This is a lightning game. Now, is the light going to cooperate here? Yes, it is. What you will see reflected in the surface of the iPad is, control your shock, bookshelves. This is a Ghostwalkers novel. The Ghostwalkers in this series, I think this is number 2 or number 3. Ghostwalkers are an elite group of government operatives, each one of whom has superpowers of some kind or other. And just like with the other elite groupings, whether it's Carpathians or whatever it is, the key to a series of novels like this will be the personalities of the characters, not so much their superpowers. And Christine Feehan is really good at that. She's really good at that. And in this case, the main character and his fellow members of the Ghostwalker team, his brother especially, they go back to their home, to their country, their ancestral home, their little cabin in the Appalachians, and they notice that somebody's been living there. And as luck, in this case fiction writing, would have it, the someone is an untrained Ghostwalker. The someone is a young woman with their kind of supernatural powers. And her powers involve electricity, and that's not the only way that sparks fly. Don't turn off the video. Or rather, maybe for your mental health, too. Anyway, I won't say it again. A romance develops between the two main characters. I'm on board for this author, as you can already tell. I'm on board for this author anyway. So any series that she does, anything she writes, I'm basically going to want to read. I haven't read this one yet, but I have read the other, at least one other Ghostwalker book, and liked it very much. So those of you who are science fiction or fantasy fans who have never read this kind of a romance might come to it and say, you might look around and say, the world building's a little skimpy. Yes, totally admit that. Yes, science fiction and fantasy excel at world building. No science fiction or fantasy author in a million years would allow the whole concept of Ghostwalkers to go so lightly examined as it is in these books. But if you get past that, the rest of it, the romance elements are really good. And then I think the next one is for the gays. But you have to keep the gays in mind. If you don't, they're going to remind you that they exist. We're here, we're queer, and we read. Get used to it. So I try to placate them as much as I can. This is another one that I haven't read. This is His Mistake, by an author who goes by the name of Pandora Pine. I'd be willing to bet that despite the nomenclature, Pandora Pine is a man. But anyway, this is a Gemini Warlocks book, the first book in a new series. Pandora Pine is incredibly prolific, as so many of these indie published authors are. I would really like to get a few of them on camera. I really should get to work on making that happen, to find out what the experience is of having 50, 30, 40 books on Amazon that have never been in a bookstore, and yet you have an avid following. Do you make a living? Do you make a good living? Do you have to be your own marketing department with things like this? You have to be your own publicity department. Is the author routinely bundling these books? So, you know, try this one for nothing and you get the next 3 for a discount price or whatnot. Ideas like that, stratagems, must come to mind when you're doing this kind of indie stuff, and it fascinates me because I think it's quite obviously the future of publishing. What's the alternative? Look at the legacy model. The legacy model is not only incredibly top-heavy and wasteful in terms of money, but also environmentally unsustainable. I don't see it lasting. I just don't. You need trucks burning fuel to move the vats of ink to the warehouses that are burning fuel to stay on and to employ their staff who burn fuel to get there. You need backhoes and bulldozers burning fuel to raise forests in order to create pulp. You have to deliver that to the factory. That takes fuel to deliver it to the factory. And then you have to make the book, and then that has to be shipped all over the world, or at least all over America. And it's not shipped by freight train, it's shipped by plane. Huge amounts of carbon input. And it's wasteful, because anybody who's worked in a retail bookstore will be able to confirm what I can tell you, which is that bookstores return a huge percentage of the books that they get. A huge percentage of those books go unsold and are boxed up and returned within a window in which the retailer can get their money back. The whole system makes no sense at all. It's designed to be wasteful. Whereas this, much less waste. and much more of the profit goes to the author, which is great. I'd love to talk to Pandora Pine, even if Pandora Pine had to be in one of those witness protection blackout modes, in case I'm right and this is a 50-year-old man. But one way or another, this is a story. The main character here is a dreamboat, of course, because this is gay indie fiction. He's a dreamboat, and he's also, as the title of the series would indicate, he's a warlock. He has control over the oceans, the waters in the ocean. He has vast supernatural powers, but he's unlucky in love. No matter how vast your supernatural powers are, you can still be unlucky in love. And he let someone who might have been that one special paramour get away and wants nothing more than to get that paramour back. Even willing to use, from the description of the book, a love spell. I would have thought that in the 21st century, the whole concept of a love spell would be out the window, just gone completely. It used to be everywhere in fantasy and romance novels of all kinds. I would think that it would be gone by now, because it is, of course, complete coercion. And we are more sensitive to things like that now, as well we should be. But I bet the author knows that. And this author has written dozens of books. She must be very savvy about those sorts of things. Probably it's done really well. I'm on board anyway. I've read a couple of this author's other books and really like them, so I will read this one. So what's the next one? Is it going to be one that I've read? Yes, it is. This is Brian Alexander. This is The Hospital. Boy, this is going to resonate with some of you, because it is so good. It is the author, sort of alien from outer space, comes down from 15 miles to look at life in a small Ohio hospital. What is it like? Not just in terms of the effect that it has on the patients and the staff, but also just take a 30,000-mile look at what this hospital says about the American healthcare system, right? Because if you're going to do a sort of a thumbprint like that, you don't want to do it at a $2 billion teaching hospital in LA or Mass General Hospital here in Boston. You don't want to do that because most of the country doesn't experience hospitals that way. You want to go to a small town in the Midwest. That's what this author does. His previous book won me over. I really, really liked it. So I read this. Also really, really liked it. Oh boy. It is virtually a hope-free book. I mean, the one thing that will make you happy when you're reading this, not that that's necessarily the reason why you read a book, the one thing that will make you happy while you're reading this is the bottomless devotion of the professionals at that hospital. And any of you who have had any experience at hospitals will already have experienced that. Bottomless devotion. They're not in it for the money, and they're in it for 120 hours a week. That will give you hope, but the rest of it, oh my. If you didn't know already that the American healthcare system is just terminally broken, you will get that sense in this book. It won't do anything to dispel that. The author has a nice, easy prose style, too, so it'll pull you right in. Okay, this next one I haven't read. It's another romance. I blame Sarah at the Bookish Knitter for developing this taste in me, and the taste is for modern-day cowboy romances. This is a cowboy kind of love. This is the Hearts of Texas novel by Donna Grant. I have read a couple of other Donna Grants. That is my romance bookcase right there. And I'm pretty sure that she is on that at some point. I think I have a couple of hers on there, but I haven't read this one. I think I've read another book, or maybe more than one, in the Heart of Texas series. But I haven't read this one, and it's a second chance love story. For those of you who don't know your romance terminology, that is the story about two people who were once in love. And then it looks like that, for one reason or another, personal or the outside world, it looks like that relationship is completely over. And then they get a second chance, and it works. They can be tremendously enjoyable to read. Second chance romances of any kind, of course, they can appear in any kind of romance novel. And they are tremendously enjoyable to read if they're done right. If it's too easy, then they're not enjoyable. The obstacles in the way of the second chance have to look real. They have to look like the kind of obstacles that we have all seen in our lives, right? That's one of the reasons why second chance romance works so well, is because quite a few people have a person in their past that they sometimes think, gee, if X, Y, or Z hadn't happened, I wonder. And second chance novels are the fulfillment of that wish. You get to read about that. No matter what happened in your own life, you get to read about that knowing that it is going to work this time. Perhaps the reason why you're not so familiar with your romance terminology is because there is no huge romance booktube event along the nature of March of the Mammoths or March Mystery Madness. I don't think there is. I don't think there is one. And maybe there should be. Maybe Sarah and I should see what we can do about that. If there isn't one, then there should be one. A month-long celebration of romance, probably in February, right? Or maybe spring. And if there is one and it exists already, feel free to sound off in the comments field and Sarah and I can just go and join. But one way or another. I know this author already. I know that I've read a couple of her books. I know that I like her, so I will give this one a try. And this next one I have read, and oh boy, is it good. This is Sean McMeekin, Stalin's War. It's a big fat World War II book, World War II history. And some of you who've been watching this channel for 4,000 videos, we're almost at 4,000 videos. I keep saying 4,000 off the top of my head, but we are almost there. We are a month away, a month and a half away from 4,000 videos. Now, I had a question at 2,000. I had a slightly fainter question at 3,000, but I am 100% positive that no other booktuber has made 4,000 videos. I would be surprised if that many YouTubers have made 4,000 videos. We'll have to think of something that we want to do there. Maybe the thing to celebrate hitting 4,000 videos would be if I don't make any more. One way or another. Those of you who've been watching my channel for a while will know that I have a sweet tooth for World War II history. I think it is the most epic historical event that's ever happened. And it happened in the modern day, so there are still living witnesses, and there are an endless number of books. And you might think I'd get a little bored with big volumes looking at that, but McMeekin takes the right approach. We tend to forget. In the West, we tend to forget that the war in the West was largely won because Stalin was willing to let Russia become a meat grinder and lose 5-1 in comparison to his Western allies in terms of people. Fielding huge armies, yes, against the advance of the Wehrmacht, but sometimes there were plenty of people in those huge armies that he fielded that were carrying pikes from their farms. They didn't even have a gun. It was a massive endeavor, as you can see there, and the response was equally massive. Russia suffered some horrible defeats and some horrible sieges, some famous sieges. And McMeekin's idea is to look at that whole tapestry of the war in the West through that lens, and it works really well. Oh boy, does it work really well. Very much hoping to review this for as big an audience as I can get my hands on. Then we have another work of history. This is American Revolutionary History. I might have mentioned this before, but I hadn't read it. This is by Jack Kelly, and it's called Valcour. And it is about the Battle of Valcour Island, in which a scrappy, just barely formed American Navy faced off against some British warships in what should have been an absolute no contest win for the British, and it ended up not being. It was one of the earliest sort of unmistakable fire signals to an impartial observer, of which there were very few, that this was not going to be the British Empire sending warships and experienced personnel across to a rebellious colony and simply putting it down. That this was going to be a war, not a police action, to use our old terminology from the Vietnam War era days. That this was going to be a war and not a police action. That, in other words, the British to be defeated. Valcour Island is one of the first of those, and the Jack Kelly does a great job, just a great job, dramatizing not only the battle itself, but also all the people involved. And on the American side, that's a lot of famous names, including Benedict Arnold. A lot of names that Americans will know, but they won't. I bet most Americans won't know this battle, and that's great that this book exists and will hopefully be stacked in bookstores. That would be great. This next one I have read, but I read it a long time ago. It's being reissued. A very pretty paperback reissue. And this is an author you already know I like. This is Frank McLynn, a great biographer, and this is his big biography of Napoleon Bonaparte. It's coming out in a beautiful paperback reissue. And I'm going to snap it up. Absolutely. I don't have a copy right here. And this answers a question that so many people in my life have asked me, which is, what is the best one-volume Napoleon Bonaparte biography? Is it Felix Markham? Is it Stefan Zweig? Who is it? What is the best one-volume Napoleon biography? I'm only going to read one, and I only advise you to read one. This is it. This is my answer to that question. Had a very boring American cover when it was first issued. Now it has this beautiful thing, and it's going to come out as a paperback. So it will be, even in today's prices, it will be relatively affordable. I think it comes out in April. But if you don't have the older copy, and like I don't have, right at the moment, I don't have any one volume Napoleon. I don't have any Napoleon Bonaparte biographies at all. I don't have Sean's book. I don't have Andy Roberts' book. Don't have anything like that. Even Adam Zamoyski wrote a really good one just a few years ago. I don't have that either. I get rid of them, mostly to you. I send them to people who say, do you have a good Napoleon biography? And in my mind, when I was doing all that, I was thinking, well, you don't need to keep these things because this is the one you want. Sooner or later, the Brattle will turn up a copy and you can just get it, whether you like the cover or not. Now I don't even have to think about that because I love this cover. And I already love this book. So this will serve as my one-volume Napoleon biography when it comes out. Then we have another book that I have read many times. I strongly recommend it. It is hysterical in every meaning of that word reading experience. This is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which is getting a paperback reprint with illustrations by Bernie Wrightson, who some of you will know, maybe some of you old-timers will know him as a Swamp Thing artist, a famous comic book artist. He's terrific. And this thing has an introduction by Stephen King. I'm not going to begrudge it that. I'll be interested to see if Stephen King has anything original to say about Frankenstein, and I won't criticize him if he doesn't, because nobody does. But I have a couple of editions of Frankenstein. I have an annotated edition and a couple of paperbacks, but I don't have an illustrated edition. And for it to be Bernie Wrightson, so much the better. So much the better. So if you don't have, I mean, you can't really tell from this picture, but this is going to have gold gilt and new introduction, and the black and white illustrations will be plates inside the book. It's bound to be beautiful, just bound to be. So if you don't have an edition of Frankenstein, you have one coming up that might fit the bill admirably. Then one that I haven't read, and this is an author I don't think I've read either, but I'm looking forward to it. This is by Madeline Martin, and it's The Last Bookshop in London. About a young woman who comes to London in the late 1930s and works in a bookstore and has, at the time that the book starts, no idea of what's coming. The Blitz, bombings, people hiding in tube stations, blackout windows, the threat of invasion. And she keeps her bookstore open throughout it all. And the advance word on the book is that it's at least as much about the glory of reading as it is about this particular shop. There were a number of London bookshops that could make this description. So I'm all for it. I will gladly read. And the more I think about this horrible thing about not researching my Friday reads, but who else does? Why am I supposed to be the only one who researches his Friday reads? The more I think about this, the more I think I have read. Then the author's name is vaguely ringing a bell. Madeline Martin is vaguely ringing a bell. I'm so terrible with author names, and actually with title names too. It's just maddening to walk around a bookstore with me. Be grateful that most of you never have. But either way, either as a historical novel about the Blitz or as a novel about the love of reading, I'm all on board. It'll be very much along the lines of the Guernsey Potato Peel Pie and Literary Society, about the Guernsey Islands being invaded during World War II and how resistance is carried on, low-key informal resistance is carried on through books, but also books save people. In every way that a book can save people, they start to save people. If this hits even some of those notes, I'm on board. I'm all for it. Then this next one is one that I have not read. I will read it. I will probably review it. But I'm pretty sure I'm not going to like it. This is Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. I read Jordan Peterson's his previous book to this. And I did a video about him that is still getting comments. And one of the most recent comments on that video is so comical, in a sad way, so comical, of someone trying to successfully imitating what Jordan Peterson does, which is to just slop up his language with pseudo-profound neologisms. Just try to sound hyper-intellectual when what you're saying is men good, women bad. But you try to sound hyper-intellectual about it. And if it's bad when he does it, with college degrees and a fair amount of learning under his belt, it's disastrous when his acolytes do it. Just disastrous. And the latest comment on that video, I try not to look at older comments, especially in contentious videos, because I know it's just going to be people finding them out of nowhere, firing off a salvo and then leaving never to return. It's not going to be any view. And so I try not to do that, but I did in this case, and oh my God. Oh my God. I will read this. I expect to disagree with all of it, but we will see. We will see. In the real sense, this is not a book. It's just the latest iteration of a social phenomenon. And as such, I will read it in a slightly different way. There's no point, in other words, in reading or reviewing this thing as a book. And that's only true for a handful of books that we have that might appear in any given year. So this next one technically is also not a book. It's not meant to be analyzed critically. It won't support even a minute of critical analysis. I've read everything by this author, and he is a liar. He's a junk. He parlays junk for his audience, just pure junk. And he doesn't do it under the idea that he is convincing people. He is doing this in order to make already convinced people feel good. And this is Stephen Meyer, and it's called The Return of the God Hypothesis. The subtitle is 3 Scientific Discoveries That Reveal the Mind Behind the Universe. Stephen Meyer is a intelligent design proponent. He is, and that term itself is a lie. He is a creationist. He is someone who says that the Christian God of the church he belongs to, not just vaguely the Christian God, but the Christian God of the church he belongs to, authored the universe and everything in it. And the 3 scientific discoveries, I haven't read any synopses of this book, so I have no idea what science he is going to bawdlerize in this book or bastardize. It's going to be bad. It always is in his books. And no matter what science he picks to desecrate in this book, the God hypothesis is not a hypothesis. It can't be a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a working idea of how something can be explained. Saying God did it obviously doesn't do that. So it's more the return of the God prayer or the God liturgy. I have no idea what the scientific discoveries are here, but curiously enough, no matter what they are, they're going to lead Stephen Meyer to exactly what you see in that subtitle, the mind. It will never be a pantheon of minds. Never. Despite the fact that 1/2 of the Earth's 9 billion people believe in a pantheon of gods. And better than 95% of the people who have ever lived on the Earth have believed in pantheons. Doesn't matter. It won't be a pantheon. It'll be one mind. And it won't just be any old mind. It won't be any other one single God. It won't be Marduk. It will be his God. So I know this is going to infuriate me. I don't know if I'll review it. I think I bashed him around a couple of times, and there's no point to it. Much like the Jordan Peterson book, there's no point to it, because no one on any side of the debate is going to care whether or not this is a good book or bad book. And the self-evident arguments that can be made that, of course, there is no, your God did not create the universe. The universe was not created. It developed on its own. There are no hidden secrets that scientific discoveries are revealing that show anything of the kind. Nothing whatsoever. Regardless of where you stand on that statement, no book is going to convince you otherwise, and no review is going to convince you otherwise. So I don't know if I'll review it, but I'll definitely read it. I should even get on to something that I will enjoy better than these. Well, okay. All right. Next one is, I did read it. I will read it again. It is very enjoyable as a reading experience, which Stephen Meyer is not. He's canting. And Jordan Peterson is not. He is, leather arm patch pseudo profound. So if he says, if his sentence is meant to say, this is a bit of a mystery, then it will go on for 14 lines, and the word quiddity will certainly appear at least once. He doesn't know how to say things simply. And he thinks that the more complicated he says simple things, the deeper he is. And so do all of his acolytes. They all think that as well. As a result that the Peterson book and the Meyer book are both going to be torture to read. This book was not torture to read, even though it did at times make me angry. This is by Mark Kurlansky. A lot of you will know that name. He has written a string of really accessible, really readable books. And this is called The Unreasonable Virtue of Fly Fishing. And it's basically his hymn of praise, but he also analyzes fly fishing, which he describes as the least successful type of fishing, the type that is most likely to result in no catch and a whole afternoon spent just trying. And he works up a bunch of philosophizing. He works up a bunch of cod philosophizing about what that means and why that is a virtue. And he's very good about it. there are the portraits in here of people that he has fished with, the descriptions of nature, and some of his thoughts on the sport itself. That's not the first time that I've read a fishing book that really is really good to read. The only problem I have with it is right there on the cover. That doesn't look gentle to me. And it's not. Unless you don't have a hook on your line. I know some fishermen who have done that. In my life, I've known fishermen who just went out with a rod and a string. And that's it. There isn't any way for them to catch a fish. The most they will hope for is that fish will be attracted to the string and come up to look at it so we can look at them. But unless you're doing that, your goal is to surreptitiously sink a barb of curved metal into the mouth of an animal that's just going about its day. And as it thrashes in agony trying to get away from that hook, you will slowly exhaust it until you can draw it closer and closer as its strength gives out, and then you will pull it into an alien environment where simply breathing is burning, and you'll club it to death. And I've lost count of how many aficionados of fishing have said to me, well, no, I don't do that. I do that, and then once the fish is exhausted, well, then I let it go. As if that makes it better. That is the only thing that could make it worse. So at the heart of this, there is an activity that I find just endlessly repulsive, just incredibly sadomasochistic and repulsive. And that makes it difficult. That's difficult to overlook. But if anybody's going to make me overlook it, it's going to be this author, and he does. So my point here is, if you object to fishing, I don't know many people who do. I don't know why. It is self-evidently barbaric. But if you object to fishing, you might still like this book. And if you don't object to fishing, oh my God, have you got a book to read? This isn't out yet. I don't think this comes out until April. But boy, oh boy, have you got a book coming that you're going to love. If you don't object to fishing, you're going to love this. Because I don't know. I'm not, totally versed on fishing literature, but I have read a lot of big names on it, including one just recently, Tom McLynn. I found a collection of his fishing writing just the other day and read it and was tremendously impressed. Loved it, even though I hated the activity at the heart of it. If you don't feel that way, if you like fishing, then oh my, have you got a treat in store for you. Then we'll harp on another one just briefly. Just briefly, I mentioned this actually in my last Friday Reads. I want to mention it again because I still don't have it. It's not out yet. I am looking forward to it even more intensely, and maybe this Friday Reads will help me to work up the courage to pull the trigger and buy it. It's going to be very expensive. If I wait a while, if I wait a year, I can find it less than that, but I don't want to. And I didn't show you the picture last time. This is the Omnibus of the official Handbook of the Marvel Universe, the Deluxe edition. It's a huge hardcover omnibus from Marvel Comics. I don't have an example of that nearby, but it's going to be like $150, and it's just an encyclopedic rundown of every character, all the heroes, all the villains, where they were born, where they grew up, what their superpowers are, how much they can lift, that sort of thing. And me wanting. But there's also another omnibus that I want, that I didn't know about, that's coming out. This is Bob Harris and the artist Steve Epting, and this is The Gathering. This is another big hardcover omnibus of their run on the Avengers, about 30 years ago. In which The Gathering is just one story. There's one story in which our team of heroes faces an alternate reality version of the Avengers who are evil. And that storyline is very good, but there are lots of other storylines that these two did, including one starring this character who really shouldn't be, in all fairness, Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, should have that center spot because it's her team. She's the leader of the team the whole time. But that is Circe, the Inhuman, the Eternal. And she has vast powers. She's super strong. She can transmute one thing into another. She can fly. She can fire energy bolts. And as so often happens in Marvel Comics, so often, when a female character on a team is more powerful than most of the other characters, the writer has her go insane. And that happens in another of the storylines that will be in this big book. Circe goes insane and isn't in control of things. And I don't want to really get into, I don't want to unpack all the stuff involved and why that happens. It doesn't all that often comparatively happen to male heroes, but it happens to female heroes all the time. Most famous example being Jean Grey, the Phoenix Saga, where essentially she goes insane. She gets a power upgrade and she can't handle it. That's the subtext behind this, is that if a female character gets a power upgrade, she's not going to be able to handle it. And either she's going to go insane or she's going to lose that power, or both. happens to almost every Marvel female character at some point or other, unless they are modestly powered. But this was Steve Epting is a great artist, and this was a very interesting team. You have the Black Knight. I imagine that's part of why Marvel is bringing this out, because they're about to do a blitz of Black Knight stuff, because he's going to be a new entry to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They want to make sure readers have at least the ability to prepare for that. He's just a dude with a sword. But in Bob Harris's telling, he is a sex object. He's got long hair and he's always stubbly, and he's given more dimension than the character ever had before, which is kind of interesting. Also, you have Hercules. You can't really tell because he's got the 90s hair and no beard. But he's on here too. I think this was in one of the many periods where Hercules is depowered for some reason or another. So he's really strong here, but he's not Hulk level strong, which is what he should be. Thor and Hulk level strong is what this character should be. I don't think he is, if I remember correctly, in this run. I have the individual issues of this, but they're in a box somewhere. And then you have the Inhuman, Crystal, an old character in Marvel continuity, who was for a while an unofficial member of the Fantastic Four. And Eternals and Inhumans and Olympians all share a weird, convoluted ancestry together. But Crystal has power over the four traditional elements: earth, air, fire, and water, and is handled really well in this issue. She is a married woman. She has a baby. She comes to the team anyway. And there are a couple of other characters that come and go, including Captain America. But the team is the Black Widows, and it's fantastic. The character stuff that's done in here is done really well, especially once the Black Knight starts to fall in love with Circe, just as she is losing control of her powers. So very good stuff. Don't have it as a big cover omnibus. Can't wait. The only problem that I have with the big omnibus of this is that this run was really great when Harris and Epting were doing it, but they often took issues off. And the issues that filled in for them were so horrible, just so horrible. It's going to be a bit of a moral offense to pay money for those fill-in issues because they're just so rotten. Maybe I'll hold off on this one until its price comes way, way down, especially since I'm pretty sure I have the electronic versions of these comics. And I have an Epic collection. I think I do, of one part or another. This next one is one we've seen before on this channel. This is The Vineyard at Painted Moon by Susan Mallory, another contemporary romance novel about a woman who's got it all. She's got a loving husband. She loves his family. She loves his business and is very active in it, running a vineyard. And then, slowly but surely, the two of them realize that there isn't any life in their relationship, and they get divorced. And when that happens, she realizes, well, okay, I sank my whole life into his life, and I don't even know where to go if I don't have any of that. And I hauled this for you, I think, in the mail, and then I read it, and it's really good. The best thing by Susan Mallory that I've ever read. I really enjoyed it. And surprisingly, hard-hitting at some points. I wasn't really expecting some of the points here to hit as hard as they did. So I very much enjoyed it, very much recommend it. And then I believe, finally, this is the last one. This is a classic, but it's an annotated edition. This is Robin Waterfield. A lot of you will know that name as a translator of classics from the Oxford World Classics series. And this is Robin Waterfield translating and annotating the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. I think this comes out in April. And it's really good. The annotations are not intrusive. They're really, really helpful. And the translation is really good as well. This is an inescapable book. Certainly if, for instance, you know any Jordan Peterson fans, they will bring this up right away. But, nevertheless, you can't blame the book for that. And the book is interesting. Very, very interesting. I mean, it's a private book written for his own edification by a Roman emperor. To be fair, eye teeth of every Roman emperor we had something like that for. So an annotated edition by a great classicist is a joy. So if you know somebody who is a target audience for this sort of thing and you have no idea what to get them, there you know. Coming in April, I think. And that is it. Good Lord, look at how long this video is. That is a Friday Reads of a type. Kind of, sort of. That is a Friday Reads of a type. I'm going to wrap this up rather than go any longer, but I, of course, want to know what you're reading. Friday Reads are a time when we tell each other what we're doing. It's sort of we're doctors. We walk into the patient's room and lift the chart off the bottom of the bed. Although doctors probably do that on an iPad now. We come in and check on each other on Fridays. How's your reading going? How's your reading week? That sort of thing. I'm incredibly curious to know, so feel free to sound off in the comments field. But one way or another, I'm going to wrap this up, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.